I'm calling the meeting order and would like to ask staff to.
Sorry, it's on there.
It is on. Can you hear me? Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, you're really here.
All right, how about this? Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order and asking staff to read the statement.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'll be reading to our public notice. To access this meeting remotely, join from PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device using this URL. The URL is listed on our agenda. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, use the drop-down menu and click on rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. To join by phone, dial 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 826-533-96072. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press *9 and wait to be recognized. Being this the second meeting of the month, we would like to draw your attention to our land acknowledgement. And then, Chair, we are ready to proceed.
All right, can you go ahead and conduct the roll call?
Thank you. For the record, this meeting was called to order at 6:33 p.m. I'll now proceed with the roll call. Chair Moore is currently absent. Vice Chair Wilson.
Present.
Board Member Blackley. Here. Board Member Calavita.
Here.
Board Member Cayetano. Here. Board Member Lethwich.
Here.
Board Member Williams. Here. And Board Member Moses. Here. On behalf of the ODPA, we have Director Aguilar. We have Investigator Wechter, our data analyst Saeed, and our policy analyst myself, Jose Murillo. On behalf of BPD, we have Deputy Chief. We have Deputy Chief Tate, as well as Lieutenant Rio. And sorry, I lost my place on my list. On behalf of the City Attorney's Office, DCA Carter is joining us tonight. Welcome, DCA Carter. And on behalf of the City Manager's Office, we have our City Manager, Paul Bodenhage. Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay. So I'd like to go ahead and approve the agenda. Does any member of the board have comments, questions, or concerns about the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'll consider that motion. Oh, the motion to approve the agenda.
I would vote to approve the agenda.
Second. No objections. Okay, motion carries. Okay.
We're going to move on to public comment.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll now proceed with public comment. As a friendly reminder, speakers are generally allotted up to 3 minutes, but may be allotted less time if there are many speakers. They may comment on any matter within the board's jurisdiction at this time, except confidential personnel matters. Only here. Okay. With that said, I'll start with those physically present first, and then I'll move on to our virtual attendees. With that said, are there any members of the public who would like to provide public comment? Okay. And just one moment while I get the timer on the screen. And you have 3 minutes.
Microphone live.
Pause the timer so that's all.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Kit Saginaw and I am here. I don't know what to do about that.
Just put it a little closer.
You can slide.
Okay. How's this? This is better? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. My name is
Can't
Kit.
hear anybody.
My name is Kit Saginaw. I'm a member of the public. I have been serving as a public member of the subcommittee that's looking at the vehicle pursuit policy. And I have a question. I see a shaking head. Does that mean you can hear me? Okay, sorry. I have a question which I don't expect to be answered, and I know public comment is not, questions are not answered, but it's one that I find interesting to consider, and I'm hoping that others might consider it also. So there was a vehicle pursuit quite recently in Berkeley, and it seems to me that it was somewhat typical of how vehicle pursuits often go. In this particular case, there was a stolen car that was located that was in the closed garage at the Trader Joe's. A police car attempted to block that car from being driven out of the garage, but the car managed to squeeze past hitting the, vehicle, the police vehicle. Another approaching police officer saw the car, had to brake, very suddenly to keep from being hit by the, fleeing vehicle. And then the pursuit started. It ended some miles away in Oakland. The vehicle, I suspect, was totaled. It ran into a building. The officer, one of the officers was injured. The two occupants of the vehicle were injured. One was taken into custody, but I believe the driver was so severely injured, they have to spend some time in the hospital, so it could not be taken into custody immediately. Two other vehicles that happened to be on the street at the wrong time were also hit. One was a school bus. Thankfully, nobody was in that. And I think maybe the driver of the other vehicle may have been injured. So my question about this is, was this a success, this pursuit? Because it did result in identifying the two people who'd been in the car. One was taken into custody immediately. The other one, I don't know what happens after they get out of the hospital. And the car, the stolen vehicle is no longer in the possession of those who stole it. Or is this vehicle, this pursuit, one that we really would like policy to help not have this kind of pursuit in the future? And that there are going to be hospital bills that I imagine cannot be paid by the two people who were in the car. I don't know who pays for those hospital bills. The car that had been stolen, I suspect, is now, totaled, and people were injured, and so forth. So my question is the goal for the policy for the future to say, yes, this was a good, there were some unfortunate aspects to this, but this was basic policy that would help avoid things that came out in this way. That's my question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can now proceed to the next speaker.
Very close, good heavens. Good evening. I was here at your last meeting, as you may remember. After I spoke at your last meeting, I waited, not trying to interrupt your meeting. And when Lieutenant Montgomery, who was at that meeting, excused himself, I went out into the hallway to ask for his card. So I had a question. I wish he was here. Lieutenant Rucco. Lieutenant? What Lieutenant Montgomery said to me was, I don't know if you know the history. I and my family were brutally abused for more than 6 years by students who were intent on hazing us. There is a very long history, as you can imagine, 6+ years. It eventually was stopped. Officer Valier actually stopped what was going on. But when I spoke with Lieutenant Montgomery, he said something that I had heard so many times. We don't take responsibility for enforcing quiet laws. We wait for the victim, I think he used a different word, to bring litigation. I've been told that now. I counted in the notes that we've kept these years. More than 40 times, a Berkeley police officer in uniform of whatever rank, I can't keep track, has told us that it is the city of Berkeley's specific intention to not deal with quiet loss. Is that official policy?
And this way, we're not actually can't answer questions during public comment.
I'm sorry. Having been. I thought I would give you all a quick rundown.
I'm sorry, there are 3 minutes allotted for public comment, and as you can see, you've gone over 3 minutes.
Okay.
Is there any additional speakers who are physically present that would like to provide public comment? With that said, I'll now move on to our virtual attendees. If you're attending virtually and would like to provide public comment, please use *9 so that you can raise your hand or use the raise hand icon so that we can select you. Vice Chair Wilson, at this time, there are no hands raised.
We'll move on to approval of the minutes, the regular meeting minutes for October 9th. Does anyone have any modifications, or can I entertain a motion?
To accept the minutes. Second. Are there any objections to the acceptance of the minutes? Okay, Vice Chair, seeing and hearing none.
Okay,
Minutes are approved.
I'll turn it over to Director Aguilar and team for the ODPA staff report.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair, members of the PAB, colleagues of the city, members of the public. We appreciate you attending today. We have a special meeting. We have our city manager, Mr. Paul Blinghagen, sitting right next to me. We're in a new era, I would say, of collaboration, and I do appreciate that the city manager is here with us. I had the opportunity to meet with him a few weeks back, and he made it a point to meet with me early on in his tenure, and I appreciate that. I actually met him almost 2 years ago now in this very room as he was going off to Emeryville, but now he had returned home. So we're excited about that. I do want to say that we are again in the new era of, I think, collaboration. And I think we have seen that, especially when we came back from NACO. We had probably one of the strongest contingency of jurisdictions there. We had various city departments. We had folks from city manager's office. We had our diversity officer present with us, Rex Brown. We had 2 BPD representatives, TC Tate, and also the data analyst and policy analyst, Arlo Walberg. Who's also leading the newly established OPSA in the department. And we had several board members, 3 board members and ODPA staff. I think we have a really good opportunity to keep making inroads and collaborating on public safety issues. If you tuned in last night, you may have seen a lot of the discussion on the reimagining. We still have a lot of good work to do there. And I think the city manager is going to be a good partner in getting us there. And I'm excited that he's here, and I just want to yield to him to see anything he wants to share with the group.
Well, thank you, Director Aguilar. I appreciate the invitation to be here. I appreciate your partnership and our meeting very early in my tenure here, back here as city manager. And I do look forward very much to collaborating with you and PAB and other folks. As you said, the reimagining meeting last night was a good one, and there's a lot of good work ahead of us to do, but I feel like I'm stepping into a place where there's been a lot of thoughtful work on a lot of people's behalf, and I look forward to working with you all and continuing that. I came here in 2016, just a little bit of background about me, I won't speak for a long time, but I started here in 2016 as the Director of Health, Housing, and Community Services, and spent a lot of time here actually in the Senior Center. And then after a few years became the Deputy City Manager, and work closely with Public Works, Planning, HHCS, Parks and Rec, and the Homeless Services Group. And then as Director Aguilar said, went to Emeryville for 2 years as their city manager, almost 2 years. And then just came back here a month and a half ago. So, so gone for almost 2 years, but back now. You know, as I've said many times, Berkeley is a really special place. It's a special place to me. I'm really pleased to be back here, and I look forward to partnering with all of you on the work ahead. So thank you for the invitation to be here tonight.
Madam Vice Chair, I don't know if you, any of the board members want to give the space, since we have them here, before I go on with the updates, or how do you want to proceed?
Yeah, but I don't know if any members of the board have questions for the city manager. I know I certainly appreciated, Dr. Arredo's participation in our meetings, and I'm assuming that is gonna continue, but, you know, I don't know how we can help you in your transition. Certainly, we would love to get feedback at some point about how our reports and, other editorials that we provide on various issues coming before the council, how those can be packaged and presented in a way that's most helpful to your office and to council. I don't know if any other members have questions or comments. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Josh. We met earlier. Nice to meet you. We received some correspondence about members of the public interested in our Citygate report, and not every member of the board probably was able to listen in on the reimagining meeting that happened yesterday. So I'm wondering if you could just provide like a brief, just really like a few sentence summary about what was discussed during that meeting. I don't know. I don't want to leave on the spot, but maybe Dr. Arredondo could give one later if you're not ready for that. But would love to hear your perspective.
Sure. Well, she could certainly do a more in-depth one. I'll say that meeting was recorded, so anybody who wants to watch it, I encourage you to pull the recording out and have a look at it. We had the folks from Citygate come and present the report. So they, I don't know, had 20 or so slides where they summarized the, I can't even remember how long the report, 158-page report or however long it was. It was a very long report that they spent a lot of time talking with staff and various members of the community about, and it was centered on the workflow, coastal workflow study of BPD. And so they had 50-something recommendations that they put forward, because they summarized those. And then Chief Lewis spoke after they did, and kind of gave an update on the recommendations that are in process that the department's working on currently, ones that are in the near future, and then some that are a little bit farther out. So, but yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to kind of highlight that. That was a big piece of work and an important study, and it was one that I encourage folks to have a look at. Thank you.
Good to meet you. I didn't actually get a chance to meet you before that, but thank you so much for coming and glad that you're here. And I did just want to sort of follow up on the recommendations that were in the Citygate report, and specifically clarify your position or understanding of the crux of the problem between the voted on and pushed forward SCU model for intervention and the way that we're currently operating the SCU, and just to understand whether that the crux of that issue is clear around the dispatch challenges.
Well, I guess, you know, I'll have to look more at that. I mean, I did read it, and I understand that there are some challenges between what was originally envisioned and what's happening now. And there's some work to do to get, you know, a 3-digit number that people can remember, a dispatch team that's engaged in fielding these calls, and how do those things get synthesized is obviously the big challenge. And we think that's, you know, there was a lot of talk last night about dispatch being the hub of, you know, a public safety system where things come in and they get dispatched out. And how does that happen? So, you know, I don't have a whole lot to say about that now, but I appreciate the opening and maybe that could be like specifically agendized or, you know, carries when folks come there to talk about it.
Right, I mean, I think there is a single decision that I think we have to align on as a city as to whether the SCU is its own number that everybody needs to learn and remember and somehow write down into their phone, or if it is integrated into the 911 system and then that works. And that question has not been decided on and answered. You're our man to help unblock that logjam. So sort of that one question, it seems to be the single biggest sticking point. SCU is up and running and able to do a lot more than they're doing right now, if not for that question.
Welcome, Chair.
Hi, Vice Chair, how are you?
Good.
Excellent. I
We
see
are,
you brought me a gift down here, but I think this is yours for the meeting, no?
no,
Okay.
but we are, as you can see, in the midst of welcoming our new city manager. Did you have any questions or?
Well, I would definitely say welcome.
Jason. Can you give me your mic, Jason?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time and energy to come down here and support our work and see, how we make our sausage. I do appreciate that. And I just wanted to extend an open invitation. If you do have any questions or concerns or anything that, you need to bounce off this body or, anything to me directly, please feel free to contact me. I'm an open door. Yeah, and welcome. Well, that's all I have for right now, but I'm glad to see everyone here and thanks.
All right, thank you again, sir, for being here. Just some quick updates. We've been announcing that our data analyst was starting soon. He started during NACO, so he had a very intimate introduction to the field of civilian oversight at the conference. This is the third week with us, so his bio is in the packet. But I wanted to just share the floor with Saeed Madi, who is our data analyst, just to give some brief remarks.
Hi, everybody. I've seen a few of you before, some new faces. It's really nice to meet all of you, and I'm really looking forward to working with police accountability and the board members, and being somebody who has a background in project management, working for the private sector, primarily, you know, different companies. This is a new experience for myself, but I was a student at Cal, so I'm very familiar with the area, and overall, I'm just really looking forward to this opportunity and working with all of you, so thank you.
And as you can see, we have him hit the ground running. He's our new AV tech, so he's up there manning the speakers. There's just a few gentle updates I want to provide the group. Bear with me. We've been mentioning that for the past few weeks that we're in a transition period to our new office. We're doing a tiered stage transition. So this week, we're gonna transition the office, the staff into the new space. We're at 1900 Addison, which is gonna be right across the street from the public safety building. It's the brick building, historical building on that corner, MLK in Addison. Then we're going to start inviting members of the public, and then hopefully the PAB meetings there. I think you're gonna be very impressed by the space, and it's gonna be a space that other commissions can use as well for our meetings, so we're excited about that. I mentioned we're on the heels of NACO, so some of the board members, I'm sure, are gonna talk about their experiences. We put a memo on the packet, just recapping on a high level our experience there again. For me, it was really special to see so many city staff and departments being represented there, because now we can start having the same conversations. They can see from our perspective. We had impacted families talking about their experience with police. We had data analysts talking about the good work that's being done on public safety. So there's, I think, a lot that we brought home. And I'm excited about this, these new partnerships we're having. Our DEI officer, a diversity officer, I mentioned Rex Brown was there. he also was able to make some connections. And he was also, specifically able to, meet with the Deputy Director of, Justice Counts. And he's going to be, having meetings with them to talk about how we can collaborate as a city with them and bring it back to the city manager. I'm sure, and do a partnership there. So I'm excited about those kind of opportunities that we're seeking out. I want to now, provide some space for our NACO correspondent, Jason Wechter, who's our, serving on the NACO. If you want to give any, status updates about what happened at the meeting in regards to the election, and also, to talk to us briefly about, the Marion County, ordinance that we put on the agenda just for situational awareness.
Yes, at the NACO conference, Director Aguilar and I participated in a panel discussion on necessary training for board and commission members. And it was largely a listening session for us to hear from members of oversight boards and commissions around the country about the type of training they would find useful as they come on, with an eye towards what resources NACO might be able to provide to them, and what training standards NACO might be able to distribute around the country. NACO currently has recommended training for board and commission members on its website, but it's 14 years old, and we felt it could be updated. Sorry, anything else about the conference?
The elections, the two new board members.
Yes, two members were elected to the board. John Alton, who is the Executive Director of the Sonoma County Office of Independent Law Enforcement Review, was elected, and Bonsicle, and I'm not recalling her last name. Do you remember?
Bonseal, the last name I'm blanking out, sorry. I'm Bonseal's last name.
Who is from,
Fort Worth?
excuse me?
She's in Fort Worth now.
Okay, yes.
And, that means we have 4 NACO members in our region, so that's pretty exciting in terms of how we can potentially leverage that to keep pushing our emphasis on effective civilian oversight. So I think that's good news for us as a region. And did you discuss Marion or Marion County or?
Yes, so Marin County, following the passage of the state law that allows counties to establish oversight of their sheriff's department, developed some community groups. They brought in NACO on a contract basis. They held a series of community groups, listening sessions, worked with the community, crafting a proposed structure. It then had to go through mandatory meet and confer. And obviously that's a private confidential process. What came out of it was not everything the community had hoped for. And again, meet and confer is confidential, so that process could not be discussed with them. But it was presented to the Marin County Board of Supervisors last night by NACO's Executive Director, Cameron McElhenney. Several NACO members, NACO board members, John Alden and George Perez-Velez, who was previously served on the Berkeley Police Review Commission and is now on the BART Police Review Board, spoke on its behalf, and it was passed unanimously by the Marin County Board of Supervisors. So they will start moving forward. They will have a 9-person commission appointed by their Board of Supervisors, and an Inspector General who will have review authority, will be able to initiate an independent investigation if they deem it necessary after the internal affairs investigation. Now, a number of other responsibilities and authorities, including issuing subpoenas. So, oversight practitioners felt this was a reasonable compromise for first go, and so it will be moving forward, albeit probably slowly.
Thank you, Jason. And the other update we have on the staff report is just a BART update. We brought it to you a few meetings back that the BART of the Independent Police Auditor Office was having a discussion with their board of directors about improving their civilian oversight, particularly asking for more resources and independence. two of your, fellow colleagues, who have served as part of the predecessor body, the Police Review Commission, are serving under BART. George Perez Velez is the chair of the commission for BART, and Russell Bloom is the independent auditor, who both have served in the Police Review Commission. The reason we bring these things up to you is because, we're trying to raise awareness about oversight, activity that could also impact us. I think as our community grows in oversight, we have a better opportunity to lobby, both at the local and at the state level on how to have effective police accountability. So we also benefit from some of the reviews, that other bodies are doing. So just bringing it to your attention, no particular action item, although the BART, they have now gone twice to the board of directors, and no official action has been taken. I think it might be, if we receive enough notice, it might be worthwhile exploring doing an official, stance on that. Considering that there are 3 BART stations in our community, and we want to ensure that there's effective oversight of those police officers. But that's all the, updates we have for now, and want to see if the chair, or any of the members of the body have any questions for staff at this time.
Let's open it up. Does anyone have any questions? Not seeing or hearing any. And that will take me to agenda item number 6. You guys off the hook. That's chair and board members report. And I just have a few things I'd like to report. First, I would like to extend my thank yous to Assistant Chief Deputy Tate, or Deputy Chief Tate, excuse me, for joining us in Tucson, and Arlo. I don't know if you're on this call, but I really do appreciate us having that time to build bridges, to communicate, to have understanding, and I thought it was a great experience. So I wanted to say that first and foremost. I also wanted to share with the board that myself and board member Cayetano got to spend a little time with high school students last week. At the Law and Justice class at Berkeley High. We got to speak to 2 different classes about the work that we do and the future of the work that we do, why it's important in Berkeley, and we got to meet a lot of the leaders of tomorrow. So that was worthwhile, and I think board member Cayetano and myself represented this board to the fullest, so don't worry, we were out there doing good work. And that was what I wanted to share with you, besides just quickly to say, thank you all for your NACOL participation, for those who did make it, who got something out of it, who learned a little something. I think it's one of the most worthwhile learning experiences of this work, and it takes us from being just volunteers to having a knowledge base of understanding and expertise. So for that, again, I want to say, everyone, thank you. And at that point, right now, I'm going to ask if any other board member would like to take the floor and have a little something to say. Board member Cayetano, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank, ADPA for inviting the board to go to NACOL and to the city to graciously funding our way there. I think it was an invaluable experience, training wise, and also a really good opportunity to get to know our fellow commissioners on the board, and also members of the department and the city who came. There were like 2 nights where we had dinner together, and just being able to see and talk to each other outside of a professional setting, or let's say a public setting, and just talk about what we were able to level with each other. I really appreciated that. I really did, enjoy our time at Berkeley High as well. It wasn't recorded, so you won't know if we represented the board well, but you can ask the high schoolers. That's all, thanks.
Please. Board member Lethbridge.
I just wanted to share that I finally went on my ride along on Monday with Officer Scott Salas. And it was really interesting and educational. It had actually been on my to-do list for years. But it turned out to be a good thing that I had waited, because I was able to have some very productive and interesting discussions with him about the body worn camera policy and the vehicle pursuits policy. So for any board members who haven't yet done their ride along, I would just encourage you to go ahead and do it, because it was even better than I thought it would be.
Thank you, Board Member Lethbridge. Please, Vice Chair.
So, I think somebody asked about the meeting yesterday. I can't remember which council committee that was, where the City Gate report was considered, along with the, reimagining recommendations. I did try to stay on to make public comment. I was not able to, but I know that I provided, my comments to the director. He did make them. So we did, officially make our PAB comments, and they got into the record at the council meeting. And I don't know, Director Aguilar, if you want to share a little bit more about what happened. I did, follow up with you, and it did sound like at least our views were considered.
Yes, thank you. And I neglected, I have a note here about that, but from my perception, the council did seem to engage with the commentary made by the board. They recognized it. Particularly, there were follow-up questions regarding the comparators. I do, city manager recommended we take a look at that recording. I do appreciate the chief's response about her vision for Berkeley being a leader and being what other agencies and jurisdictions are comparing. So I appreciate that vision, but we still from a statistical level, and we still need to have benchmarking. So I think there's a lot of room for that discussion, but I also did appreciate the vision there. I think that there were more commentary as well regarding SEU. The council members are, it has been brought to them by various individuals, not only this body, but Mental Health Commission and other community members. So it's something I think they want to ensure that's being incorporated. And there was, I think, some thoughtful consideration and dialogue about these particular items. And it was very helpful to represent the PAB's letter through the Vice Chair's commentary. So thank you.
Thank you both. Anyone else? Oh, yeah, Board Member Cavalier.
So I just want to draw everybody's attention to one of the things that was distributed in the packet. It's on page 79 of the packet. This is the Center for Policing Equity report that they have recently put together. And it is really relevant to the report that we put together on fair and impartial policing and racial disparities. And this report, I haven't had a chance to study it, but it is a report that brings together data from 8 of the 9 largest police jurisdictions in California, as well as 20 other jurisdictions across the United States. And their goal is to try to unpack and untangle the factors that go into racial disparities. I know that we discussed that a little bit, and it was actually something that some feedback that we got that possibly in the future we could try to untangle the various factors that go into racial disparities. And this is the only sort of study that I know about that tries to do that. They look at stops, searches, and use of force. And ultimately, they argue that each one of those stages compounds elements at the subsequent stage. So you know, I think it's going to be really interesting for us to study this report. It is in our packet for tonight. The stop rate disparity ranges wildly from one of these jurisdictions that they studied to the other, but the median racial disparity stop rate is 2.6. In other words, that Black people are 2.6 times more likely than white people, given the population to be stopped. And so we do have that figure to compare our own to in the future. In any case, it's a very interesting report. I've only had a chance to look at it a little bit, but I urge you to take a look at it. By the way, this Center for Policing Equity is the center that the city of Berkeley commissioned in 2018. They came before this body and presented their findings on racial disparities in Berkeley. So it is an an institution that we know well.
Thank you. Is anybody else?
Just to clarify, that was the previous report, actually, before ours was the police equity, was the Center for Policing Equity report.
Yeah, well, way back in 2018.
I'd just like to piggyback off, sentiments of the board member Leftwich earlier about, doing your first ride along. I'm very much looking forward to doing my first ride along, hopefully this weekend, not next. But in addition to that, just want the board to be aware that I began training, for internal affairs certification with the Daigle Law Group. And so far, it's been very interesting, learning about the differences such as between criminal investigations and administrative investigations, and even some of the protections that officers have. And so I just plan on applying that to our findings for my subcommittee for so thank you.
Excellent. Board Member Williams, way to get in there. Love it. Is there anybody else who'd like to say anything? Because now's your time. All right, I'm gonna land this plane and take us to Chief of Police's report. Deputy Chief Tate, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. Hopefully I can get through this without freezing like last time. I'd like to start off just by saying it's really nice to see everyone who was at NACOL. It's nice to see you now that we're back. We very much enjoyed the conference and the opportunity to hear about the experiences and research from across the nation, and found the experience to be very valuable. That said, launching into a few cases of interest, I wanted to start with the ALPR program update and just share that we're continuing our rollout with a handful of selected officers, detectives, and supervisors who are using the system during our initial implementation period. So we're calling this a beta testing period. We've already had several success stories where officers have made custodial arrests and recovered stolen vehicles. In addition, our detectives use the system while investigating an elder abuse scam. We were able to locate the suspect's vehicle and take him into custody. In another case, there were, as many of you know, the series of shots fired calls in multiple locations around the South Campus area last weekend. And there were no injuries or anyone taken into custody, but this case rightfully generated a great deal of concern within the community and media attention. And I will share that we used the flock cameras and the university shot spotter during this investigation, and hope to provide an update with that. This investigation is still ongoing. And speaking of shooting investigations, in another case, our detectives had been searching for a suspect in a recent shooting, and last Saturday, while they were assisting at the Cal football game, one of our lieutenants was on a traffic post up in South Campus and saw a suspect in the case walking in the area. They found him and he led them on a brief foot chase, and they were able to capture him and safely take him into custody. So that was a great success story to close out one of our shooting cases. A couple updates. I'd like to thank Director Aguilar for sharing Vice Chair Wilson's comments during the Citygate presentation yesterday, and for taking the time to put those together. Vice Chair Wilson, thank you. Also at the last meeting, Chief Lewis had mentioned the EIS RFP was closing. We did receive 4 proposals and held demonstrations with those vendors. The interviews included stakeholders from the PAB, BPA, and BPD leadership. And based on the discussions with those who participated in the first round, we're narrowing down on the vendors, and we'll be holding a second round of demonstrations. These meetings will include additional internal stakeholders, and we've certainly appreciated the PAB's involvement in this process so far. Today, Chief Lewis and I, along with 10 members of the police department, attended the 3rd annual Achievers Luncheon presented by the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of Noble. The luncheon is a meaningful event dedicated to recognize excellence in law enforcement, fostering diversity, and building stronger community police relations. I'd like to say that I walked out of there feeling enlightened, and it was very well attended and an overall great experience to kind of showcase the community and law enforcement relations that have just been exceptional over the last few decades. That being said, those are all the updates I have, unless anyone has any questions.
We'll turn on the mic first and then open the floor to questions. Board Member Lethwich?
And just a quick question about the department's website. Before I went on my ride along, I thought it was gonna be with somebody else, and I went on the website and I could not find a list of officers. And I don't know if I missed it, but I did look around for several minutes, and I think I had that experience before where the only name that's listed on the website is the chief. So am I missing something, or is there not a list of the department's officers on the website?
So we generally don't have, we used to have, you're right, we used to have the beat officers and whatnot. We have done away with some of our ability to sort of curate the website. It is handled by the city PIO team, and we can look at seeing whether or not that's something that we can get on there. It's something that changes every 6 months and would require a lot of touch points. So we'll see what we can do to address that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone? Hey, not seeing or hearing any. Deputy Chief Tate, thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much.
Which takes us to Jose. We are at agenda item number 8, subcommittee reports.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with, as always, I'll go down the list, and if any subcommittee has a report, once I call up the subcommittee, that'll be the time to do it. I'll start off with the regulation subcommittee.
Sorry to say, they're still trying to schedule it, our next meeting, so hopefully we'll have one more meeting and then start the negotiation process.
Okay, fair and impartial policing implementation,
Nothing to report there.
surveillance technology policy. No report. Okay, policies and practices related to downtown task force and bike unit allegations.
On hold.
No report at the moment, on hold. Body worn camera policy.
Actually, I do have an update. We're gonna be resuming our review of this policy after we're done with the vehicle pursuit policy. But as I mentioned, I went on this ride along on Monday, and I asked to see Officer Salas's body worn camera, because I've never seen one up close. And I learned that it's attached by a magnet to the officer's chest or abdomen, lower chest. And we were talking about the vehicle pursuit policy, and I said that our recommendation was that there be a provision in that policy requiring body worn camera footage of pursuits. And we were told by, at the time, by the department representatives, that that's really not necessary because it's covered in the body worn camera policy. I think we're still gonna pursue that, but the interesting thing was, I was asking him about that, and he said that in order to do that currently, he would have to physically remove his camera and hold it. And I was under the misunderstanding that vehicles had cameras on the vehicle itself, but that's not the case. And so it seems pretty crazy to me that in order for the footage to be obtained of a pursuit, the officer would have to physically remove his or her camera and hold it up while driving. So that alone was worth the ride along.
Thank you. I'll move on to conflict of interest. Okay. And then this was for policy complaint 2023 PR 003.
I think regarding conflict of interest, didn't we want to move to eliminate that subcommittee?
I thought we decided to defer that until after the department's response to our subpoenas.
Oh.
But I don't know if there has been a response.
We're keeping our powder dry around them, just in case. That was my understanding.
I think we'll just hold off, but
For policy 2023 PR 003.
I don't have that.
Okay. Policy review committee?
yeah, we're gonna be providing an in-depth discussion of the current status of the vehicle pursuit policy later on in the agenda. I just wanted to note though that it's Sergeant Rafferty is now the department rep and no longer Sergeant Spear.
Perfect, I'll make that change. Okay, budget and metrics?
I just say, appreciate the board's feedback a couple of meetings ago on our draft metrics. The vice chair and I need to take one more pass through that. And come back to this group with kind of a refined set of recommendations, hopefully that we can implement next year.
Outreach and engagement?
Looking forward to the next batch, of accommodations, which I don't think of, honestly, okay, great. So that the chair and I can do a review, and again, come back to this group with a small subset that we put forward for accommodation.
On-duty conduct? Operations and processes?
Nothing to report.
BPD policies 1010 and 1034 review?
So we've met once, we're gonna meet again next week, and we'll have something prepared for our next meeting.
What is it we're talking about?
That was the policy review on those couple of cases that were a little too expansive to put with the policy subcommittee. So myself and board member Williams decided to take these on.
Perfect. And any updates from our liaison list or policy?
Yes.
Policy reviews? Okay.
So as Deputy Chief Tate mentioned, I spent all of Friday, because around 8 hours, meeting with vendors for the early intervention system. And, this project stemmed from research that I was doing a year ago now at this point, that the city council actually required an implementation of a new early intervention system. And that was the report that I produced, and that was the email that I sent to the city manager's office and to the department. And so here we are a year later, about to select a vendor. And I will say, I won't speak to which specific vendors that I prefer, but I will say that I do think that there are specific vendors that fit the spirit and the purpose that was set forth in the early intervention proposal. There were ones that don't. And so I won't be able to attend the next internal meetings with the department and the next vendors that they pick. And I won't know how much of a say that we have in the final decision-making process, but I will have, a chance to weigh in front of this body once that decision is made. And I hope that, I'll agendize that once the final decision is made. And so I hope that we can continue to work together with the department. I expect to circle back with the department once they've had their internal meetings. They're meetings that I personally cannot attend just for scheduling purposes, but also I think they need to have internal discussions with the higher ups in their office and the vendors. So I hope to come back to the table with them once they're done with that to finalize the process. And hopefully, every single timeline that was proposed to us would have a working early intervention system implemented, but in 6 months. That was the latest timeline. So I think that it's doable, and I think that everyone thinks that it's doable. So I expect that to be done within 6 months. Hopefully everything works out. So thank you for bearing along with this process. It's been a year in the making, I would say, maybe even more, because the council directive was in 2021. So it's been a long time in the making.
All of your work on the time.
Yeah, it can be done without the collaboration between the department and us. So I really appreciate the engagement that they have on this, and I hope that it just continues going forward.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you present your feedback about the various vendors to the department? So they know they have your feedback, you can't attend that next meeting, but they.
Yeah, it wasn't really so much of a presentation as it was a discussion. We're trying to come to a consensus at the end on Friday at the end, but we couldn't. And I think that they just need time to think about the ramifications of, each vendor. And I don't have any indication that they won't ask me to, come back and discuss their final choice before they actually make it.
Anyone else?
That's it.
Okay, that takes us to agenda item number 9, old business. 9A, discussion and action on the PAB's 2025 regular meeting calendar.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This item was on our agenda last week. The board tabled it for consideration during this meeting. On page 50 of your packets is the 50 and 51 is the updated meeting calendar for 2025. For the board's meetings, we're presenting it to you today for approval or any additional comments, tweaking of the dates, so that we can start getting that coordinated and preparing timelines around those meeting dates. We're bringing this schedule for your approval.
I move that we approve the calendar.
Okay, I'll proceed with the roll call vote. Board Member Blackbeard? Yes. Board Member Calavita?
Yes.
Board Member Cayetano?
Yes.
Board Member Leftwich?
Yes.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
Board Member Moses?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wilson?
Yes.
And Board Member Williams?
Yes.
The motion carries. And we're ready for the next item.
Excellent. And before we get to that item, I'm going to see if the city manager would like a reprieve. I don't know if you need to go through the machinations right now. We do appreciate your time and energy. But if you'd like to step away and let us finish, we're comfortable with that.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that.
Of course. And thank Board Member Calvino.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Of course. And that will take us to agenda item number 10, new business, discussion and action on new policy complaint 2024 PR 0005 in accordance with section G. Policy complaints and reviews of the PAB's standing rules. Director? Or Jose? I don't know. It's part of this one.
I'll yield to our policy analyst to give us an introduction. I'll fill in the gaps.
Thank you, Director Aguilar. So on page 53 of your packet, we do have the notice of the policy complaint number 2024 PR 005. This was a complaint that we received last week, I think, or sorry, I lost track of my days. But October 24th is when we last received it. This particular policy complaint made 5 particular requests. The first was there was an investigation aspect of it in terms of particular incidents, including a request for certain documentation. They request disciplinary action for the incidents outlined in the report, or sorry, the policy complaint form, and particularly a review of training and policies regarding the department's use of force, including chokeholds, physical restraints, and the authorization procedures for individuals, particularly public members of the public, to engage in these practices. For 4, there is the public transparency. Sorry, my throat got a little dry there. There's a public transparency aspect of it, requiring reports of findings and steps when investigating misconduct, and a request for restitution and remedies. In terms of potential areas of review for this particular complaint, we identified a BPD policy 300.3.8, chokehold prohibition, BPD policy 300.6.5, regarding state public records and disclosures, BPD policy 425.15, retention requirements for records, and BPD policy 605, Brady material disclosure, based on the content of the policy complaint form that we received. So the general actions are outlined in section G of the standing rules. For the board's consideration, I believe we have the submitter of the complaint with us joining remotely. If you're here, would you mind just raising your hand on Zoom? Perfect, then I do see the hand raised. Before I proceed with the just with the time that's allotted, which is the 5 minutes for the complainant to speak and any additional public comment for 3 minutes. Director, is there anything else you would like to add?
Not at this time.
Chair Moore, if you're ready, the complainant is in the Zoom webinar. They're ready to speak. I could yield my time for 5 minutes.
Let's begin.
Okay. And the complainant has been allowed to speak. If you'd like to identify yourself, just one moment. I did 5. You don't have to if you'd like to remain anonymous. But the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. So this complaint is about a civilian who has a working relationship with the Berkeley police, working relationship with internal affairs, with the lieutenants, with the chiefs, with the officers for over a decade through the ambassador program, targeted minorities, targeted people with disabilities, but particularly targeted people without houses, without resources, without money. Through that program was partially funded by the city. So in the first instance, in 2014, this gentleman approached a homeless man at 7 in the morning on a public parking lot and told him to vacate. But he wouldn't. So we have two different witnesses on this case. And so the gentleman put the homeless man in a chokehold. We don't know. That was that. So we know that a chokehold happened. So then a city worker on their way to work started an email chain detailing the incident and how bad it was. And the Berkeley police replied with smiley face, we'll give you more training. We'll give you more training. So there's no police report, there's no investigation, there's no statements, there's nothing. Then on the second incident, this gentleman moved from the Downtown Berkeley Association to the YMCA, and some confrontation happened with a tenant, Hispanic foreign-born tenant, and so eventually he got frustrated, threw him to the ground and choked him for 5 minutes. The police report says nothing about, mildly describes the fight, but says obviously there's nothing. So we sent the police an evidence preservation request, but nothing. There's nothing to show. No body cam. As the police entered the premises, the chokehold was still ongoing. It's not described in the report. It's not mentioned. There's nothing. Okay. So then we go on to the third incident where the gentleman cornered me. He threatened me and my girlfriend, he insisted that I come follow him outside for 15 minutes, kept saying, hey, let's go talk outside. And I refused. And I felt so threatened, so powerless that I pushed him. And he grabbed me, threw me to the ground, and choked me for 15 minutes. The police came, one of which I'm a foreign-born Hispanic, and my girlfriend is a foreign-born Hispanic. So the police officer who comes, he shot and killed a Hispanic at San Jose PD. So he was well equipped to cover up this incident. He, as you can see in the image attached in the report, saw what happened, but could not describe it. He didn't have any words to put in the report. So they denied me medical care. They took me to jail, out of my home. So they took me from my home in a chokehold to jail. Somehow that was the appropriate measure here. And so I want to end these incidents by just reminding how this person has a working relationship with the police, over 10,000 emails between the police and him, friends with internal affairs, friends with the chiefs, friends with the lieutenants. And so what the result of all of this is that there's a single report pointing fingers at him with the district attorney. There's no investigation. There's no interviews with him. There's no question. There's no money for the victims. There's nothing. It's everything stacked with this man who's a convicted felon. He doesn't remember what felony he committed, but you know, this is the situation. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you. Chair, now, based on the standing rules, section G1B, we are supposed to open up public comment for any members of the public who would like to provide additional comment. At this time, I'll now proceed with doing so. Are there any members of the public who are physically present that would like to provide public comment on this specific item regarding this policy complaint? Okay, seeing or hearing none, I'll now move on to our virtual attendees. Is there anyone attending virtually that would like to provide public comment at this time regarding this item, which is item 10A? Chair, at this time, there are no hands raised. The board now has the option to ask any clarifying questions to the complainant. I have not removed their permission to speak, so they could engage if there are any questions.
Let's do the process. If there's board members that have any questions, we'll queue up now. Board member Calvino.
Yes, so I noticed in the requested actions here, which I assume are from the complainant, that some of them go beyond what we're authorized to do in a policy complaint, asking for disciplinary action and so forth. But one of them is about review of training and policies regarding, I assume regarding such ambassadors and the relationship to the department. So, I mean, chokeholds are prohibited in the department, correct?
That's correct.
And so I think it would be appropriate to review the relationship, the official relationship between the ambassadors and the department and what it is they are authorized to do, what kinds of force they're authorized to engage in, and that sort of thing. It seems to me that that would be the policy question that we could be authorized to investigate, because these other things, investigating the misconduct and so the alleged misconduct would be beyond the policy complaint review, but we can certainly review the relationship between the downtown ambassadors and the police and what those ambassadors are authorized by the department to do and how they're trained and all of that.
And we do have Lieutenant Rago here today. If there's any additional information that you can provide us on behalf of the department regarding that question.
Start with that regarding the ambassadors.
Yes, kind of regarding what kinds of use of force the ambassadors, the downtown ambassadors are authorized to use and what their official relationship is to the department and so forth.
To the best of my knowledge, the ambassadors, well, they don't work for the police department. They don't work for the police department, they work for the city. They're not regulated or enforced by us. The most interaction we have with them is with them calling in on certain things that are happening and then having us respond to evaluate what's going on.
So where would we find out what the relationship to the city is and what the city has authorized them to do in terms of use of force? Because we have, of course, the department has use of force policies. Are there such policies for the ambassadors?
I'm not familiar with what the ambassadors are charged with.
It seems like something we should look into, even though we don't have jurisdiction over the ambassadors, which it appears are city contractor.
Just to make sure I'm understanding everything, so the entirety of this complaint is about activities of the ambassadors? Because it refers to Berkeley police officers, but as I'm looking at it more carefully, is it accurate that this is about the behavior of the ambassadors, all of this?
Well, then subsequently, what officers did or didn't do in response, yeah, but that would seem to me to be alleged misconduct.
So I'm not sure a policy review of use of force or chokeholds is appropriate, right? This is not activity engaged in by the police, but rather their response to potentially illegal behavior on the part of other city staff.
Yeah, my question, when I was reading the staff report here and the potential areas of review, is there a policy around this sort of question about deputizing or authorizing third parties in a way? And that does seem to be sort of absent. Maybe there is no such policy. So, how are there any circumstances in which BPD can deputize or authorize a civilian to take some action or not? But we're kind of silent on it. We should just understand that. Is there a policy on that? And then specifically, what's the relationship of BPD with the Downtown Berkeley Association? Or are there any other MOUs like we look at with other kind of cooperating partners? That would be two areas that feels like we're not addressed here that we should at least have a look at. But then you're right, because the rest of this is then what's BPD's obligation to investigate incidents with these other groups? And that feels like a lot of the complaint is improper investigation or lack of investigation.
Just ask the director a question about this policy complaint. When it was made, did you ask the person who made the complaint whether they wanted to submit a personnel complaint?
Mm-hmm.
Because that seems more appropriate in this instance.
That's what it sounds like.
So there is as indicated in the packet and part of the policy complaint, at some point there was personnel, and that was reviewed by the office. I can confirm that. He is now interested in broader questions that felt that still needed to be reviewed by the body. So there is a history, which is why you see some of the materials he included are clearly linked to a particular incident that occurred. But so there's the macro, I think, broader policy practices that he wants to address, but there's also that is tied to a particular incident that was experienced.
And it looks like the latest incident was in 2022, so we're out of time for personnel like anybody.
Right.
So my idea is that we do not assign this to staff or approve staff's recommendation. Instead, I think it would be useful to understand if there is any relationship whatsoever between the downtown ambassadors and the police department. Maybe who oversees the downtown ambassadors and where complaints about their behavior can be filed. So maybe staff could bring back some information like that. That might be helpful.
Sorry, just to clarify the request, so is the request to have staff conduct additional sort of research into this and then bring it back to the board?
That's my idea, if anything, I mean, at least that would be helpful for the complainant and the community to know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the requested actions in the policy complaint are ones that we can't really do. I mean, we can't make an investigation, or we did it seems like. We can't take disciplinary action based on the complaint. We can't make a public report based on these individual cases. And the use of force wasn't committed by the Berkeley sworn officer. So that seems like the best that we can do in this situation is look at the relationship between the downtown ambassadors and the department.
You can, but just to from our process perspective, when we receive these, we try to triage them, making sure that it's not personnel. And then we talk to the complainant and explain that process and policy. When we review from policy element, we try to do that initial review and see what is actionable for the board. There is commentary here about internal affairs outright lying. And there are policies within the department that prohibit that behavior, which is why we outlined some of grave material, grave disclosure. So there are elements that I think you can touch, whether you want to or not is a different question, but we try to tease out what could potentially be actionable for the board.
I mean, I think to that point, the severity of the allegations, lead me to be more interested in, accepting the ODP's recommendation with the direction that we've given, that really, I think the primary focus is on that relationship between, the department, between species. But I think what you're saying, Director Aguilar, is there's a policy violation angle here as well, that we could investigate.
I don't think we can say there's a policy violation. I think that the best that we can say is if these are true, would this have violated the policy? As in, does the policy as written need to change? And my understanding is that the policy does prohibit destroying evidence, things of that sort, you know, changing internal affairs investigations. So that would be the extent that we can say in that scenario.
Sure. So like you're putting that a policy investigation outcome can only be a change in policy, not a. What the policy investigation is not an investigation of a violation of that policy.
Yes.
My question still comes back to this point in the third incident where they talk about Berkeley Police again authorized X to engage in, like, can BPD authorize civilians to do anything? Is there a policy at all with respect to that or not? Should there be a policy at all with respect to that or not? I don't know.
And that is an area of law that can be further explored. There in the code, there's an opportunity to deputize individuals, but it's very explicit on how to do that process. So at this point, we really, from surface level, we can't say whether this individual was deputized or not, and what the practices or process for the BPD is regarding that particular area of law, without doing further review.
That to me feels like I agree. The rest of this is about application of existing policy to a particular incident, right? And whether or not we violated policy, and that's a personnel complaint, we're past the time of being able to do that. But if we're hazy or gray on this whole issue of deputizing, authorizing other, like, that just feels feels like it's very squishy in this description. Again, I don't know how accuracy, but it feels very squishy, and I don't have a good answer as to how that's done. So maybe, and I don't have visibility to the policy to know whether there is a policy or not around this. Is there? But I'm interested in that. But it feels like there could be some investigation, additional work, not investigation, but additional work to explore that.
That blends with what Vice Chair Wilson was saying. I mean, you're saying like, we need to know what the policy is and also subsequent
And
to that.
like, there's a policy question about this authorization, deputization question, and then there's just general relationship of BPD with,
Exactly.
like, those are kind of two related, but slightly.
Exactly. So maybe we send it back to the director's office and ask them to, you know, give us another report on that specific issue that we're interested in.
Although, Director, I didn't understand what you were telling us a moment ago about certain aspects of this being something that we could investigate beyond the policy.
So then I think I always go back to this. I think it doesn't help that we call this policy complaint, because it's misnomer. To me, it's broader policy, practice, and procedures. So which is informing which? So it might be, there might be a strict policy, but there might be some practices, procedures going on that are interacting with that, or vice versa. So at the surface, I think he provided areas that, while there might not be a strict policy, there might be some practice around it within the department, and it might be that they need to codify or prohibit that particular behavior.
Right. So we need to investigate not just the policy, but the practice.
Right.
think that's right.
Speaking to that, should the form that complainants fill out be more explicit about that or be tweaked so that
Excellent point.
that distinction is clear?
Yes, and I don't, there were certain things that coming on here, I didn't touch, and the complaint forms is something that I left untouched, but I agree, because it keeps coming up every time.
Every time, agreed. So with that understanding, I'm gonna see if we can build a little consensus and move on. I wanna see where we are as a body and take a temperature. I know that Vice Chair put out a couple of policy directions. Are we comfortable with that as a body? Okay, if so, I'm gonna ask for a motion.
I move that we take it back to the director's office, ask them to give us a report on the ability of the department to deputize civilians and the specific relationship with the ambassadors downtown.
Second.
Excellent.
Is it appropriate, and maybe it's inappropriate, to ask whether a complaint was filed with internal affairs as to alleged misconduct?
At this time, I think it is, right? We're not allowed to.
Talk about the internal affairs? Okay,
Yeah, but I do think, there is information there that we didn't, in our review, believe that it needed to be made, redacted, and I think he provided information about steps he took and why he reached his conclusion about internal affairs lying. So he's making specific accusations regarding his interactions with the department.
So we're still going, right? Jose, let's
Yeah.
go ahead and make it happen.
Okay, so on the motion to have ODPA research the issue on deputizing in the relations with the ambassador program, motion by Board Member Cayetano, seconded by Vice Chair Wilson. I'll proceed with the roll call vote. Board Member Blackaby?
Yes.
Board Member Calavita? Board Member Cayetano?
Yes.
Board Member Leftwich?
Yes.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
Board Member Moses?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wilson?
Yeah.
And Board Member Williams?
Yeah.
The motion carries.
And that takes us to, agenda item number 10, B, policy review updates. ODPA?
Okay, so the material for this item can be found on page 67 of your packet. When we provided the timeline, before the summer break, we had provided anticipated presentation dates as well as a summary of the policy reviews of policies, practices, and procedure, that are pending within our office. In the last few meetings that we've had, we presented a few policy, reports to you. On page 68, what we have here is just the updated list of the current policy reviews. And I'll hand it over to Director Aguilar for any additional updates. I know there's the status updates regarding the subpoenas.
Well, no specific action is being requested. It was just, to bring it to your attention where we are. We are also taking the feedback about, length of reports, and we're trying to make sure that they're digestible for all audiences. So we're trying to find ways to be thorough and also balance, how brief they are and consumable they are. So we are balancing them.
I had a question for you. So I see that there are, been assigned 11 policy reviews and you completed 4, 6 are still in progress. And I know we keep adding things to your plate. I see the list. Is there some prioritization that your office has done? Because there are a lot of these. Maybe you could just respond to that.
Yeah, and that's the projected presentation date is when we looked at it, when we took stock of it, is how we were prioritizing it and also when we were receiving them and also their subject matter. So some of the things, and some of the policy and practices, procedure reviews, they were heavier lift because of the subject matter and because of prior involvement with BPD and reviewing those records and getting access to those records. So we are it's dynamic list, it's not static prioritization. If we get stuck, then we have to readjust.
So thank you for sharing this. It's helpful to get the whole view of everything. And there's no particular time sensitivity under any regulation in terms of when, this is all our internal timing, right? In terms of when these have to be.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. That's, so these are our target dates, but, okay, thank you.
Do we have any questions for the office? Anything we need to, talk about now? Right, I'm not seeing or hearing anybody. So I'm gonna take us to 10C. Discussion and action regarding proposed Berkeley Police Department policy 307, vehicle pursuits. Board Member Lethbridge?
Yeah, so I'm gonna turn it over to, Board Member Cayetano in a minute. He wrote our memo. But I just wanted to preface this discussion by noting, that this is a really complicated issue. The policy requires a careful balancing of two, sometimes competing, conflicting public safety needs. One being the need to apprehend individuals suspected of violent crimes, and the other need is to protect the public from potentially dangerous high-speed pursuits. So this isn't a simple task. Tonight, we just wanted to preview some of the issues for the board. We're not asking for the board for a vote on anything. We're just providing an update. Before I turn it over though to Board Member Cayetano, I just wanted to make a motion to allow Kit Saginaw, who spoke earlier during public comment, who's the public member of our subcommittee, to speak if she would like to. Kit served on several of the PRC policy subcommittees, and her suggestions are always very helpful. So if someone would second. Pardon? I will say. Thank you. And then, Ms. Agnor, if you would like to say something now, that's fine. If you'd rather wait until the end of our discussion, it's up to you.
Chair, just a quick question, just for a matter of procedure. Is there any objections to that motion? Okay, seeing or hearing that, motion carries.
Okay. Okay, then Board Member Cayetano, if you want to take the.
Do you want to take a seat up there? Take away. Hi, everyone. I hope that you had a chance to read our memo. I wanted to write the memo because I think the way that we do subcommittees can sometimes put our work behind closed doors. And I wanted to, get a temperature check from the board on the work that we're doing, because we are, making a lot of changes. We're not making a lot of changes, excuse me. We are having in-depth discussions with the department. And we will soon be beginning our 60-day policy review as required by the charter. And so part of the goal is to generate discussion by noting some flashpoints in the policy that we have not internally yet come to. I mean, we've come to an internal understanding of what we want, but we want a fuller understanding of what the board wants and what the public wants. And so I think that the vehicle pursuit policy has turned into something even statewide that has become of interest. Like Governor Newsom essentially told Oakland that he wanted to restrict, he wanted to loosen their vehicle pursuit policy. And the Oakland Police Commission, some of whom I met with at NACL, had an entire review process directed by their city manager and by their council and with department weigh-in. And they essentially came back to Governor Newsom and they said, no, we like our vehicle pursuit policy the way it is. It keeps our officers, it keeps our civilians safe. And so then the department said that they needed to update their vehicle pursuit policy because of the ALPR program. And I don't think personally, I quite understood the intersection of pursuits and ALPRs until the incident a couple weeks ago, when there was an ALPR, a flock hit. And a pursuit was initiated after a report of a stolen vehicle, and then the person tried to flee, and then during the process of fleeing, there was a side swipe, and the officer involved understood that the person, or he thought that the person tried to ram him, so that allowed, under the policy, for a pursuit to be engaged. And I think that the department has made very clear that there's going to be many of these hits. And I then started to look at nationally the intersection of LPRs and pursuit policies, and I realized there is a correlation there. And so I think that it should be of interest here in Berkeley. And the points that I wanted to raise, I think, are maybe like threefold, fourfold that are in the memo. The first is that vehicle pursuits are very dangerous. And I think what we have understood from the department is that they know that too. I mean, during my first ride along, one of the first things that the sergeant mentioned to me was like, he's like, I'm glad for our vehicle pursuit policy. I would hate that if my daughter was staying on the street and there was two cars chasing after each other and she was the one that was hit. That was one of the first things that he said to me. And I didn't know anything about our vehicle pursuit policy at the time. I mean, this was a year ago. We didn't even know that we would be covering this. And I talked to, at NACOL, a member of the Cleveland Police Commission. And I told her that we were interested in the vehicle pursuit policy. And she said, wow, that one is of personal interest to me because a year ago, her niece was killed during a vehicle pursuit while she was sitting, waiting for the school bus, 12 years old. And there was a police car that was chasing and a fleeing suspect, and the fleeing suspect went over the curb, and the police car went over the curb with it and spun out and hit her niece, and she died. So I just like the combination of all these things has really put it center stage for me. And I think the department understands that. And so that's why, like, in the spectrum of vehicle pursuit policies, ours is restrictive. Like, there are other vehicle pursuits policies that allow for really reasonable suspicion of any crime. An officer can go and chase. Ours doesn't allow that because we understand that they're dangerous, especially in Berkeley, in a very densely populated neighborhood with small streets. And, you know, we have these construction barriers in South Berkeley that prevent people from going around, from cars going through them and all these things. We have a lot of schools here, et cetera. So I just wanted to, in the memo, just highlight the purpose and scope language that both the department and the subcommittee agreed upon, which is a revision from the old General Order V6, because I think it captures both the facts that they are high-risk endeavors and the fact that officers need objective criteria and clear decision-making processes before becoming engaged in a pursuit. It's really easy to get caught up in the moment. That's what training is for, right? Training teaches you to go through certain steps so you don't get just caught up in the moment and then, you know, do something that you would regret later on. And so I'm glad that we settled on this purpose and scope language. The next
If I could just interject, just so process-wise.
Yeah.
This started out as you'll remember it as the lexical subcommittee because Lexipol Issues is a nationwide company that issues templates for law enforcement agencies to use. And so Berkeley has general orders that were then transitioned into Lexipol policies. And the PRC had a Lexipol subcommittee, and we looked at the policies as they were being transitioned. And what we found, and I think what we found again here with vehicle pursuits, is that the Lexipol policies are not very good. General orders in Berkeley are pretty good. I mean, we have suggestions and ways to strengthen them. But so this process started out as just coming up with language to transfer the General Order V6 to Lexipol Policy 307. And so we came up with the new scope and purpose language or whatever it is that you were just referencing, which was stronger than the general order, but definitely a lot better than what was in the Lexipol policy. So just process-wise, I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Barbara Lockbush.
I'm sorry, but what would help me in you going through this is, because I think appendix A is helpful, but I'm not exactly sure how to read it.
Okay,
And I think the issues that you want us to weigh in on or to discuss, I think are where maybe the subcommittee and the department are not yet aligned. I'm not sure, but if that's the case, I would like us to focus there, but I'm struggling to kind of understand how to read appendix A with that lens in mind.
sure. So I just wanted to set the stage for why I thought the vehicle procedure policy was important, but I can help you read it. The appendix, because that's something I also put together. The titles are B6 is the older current policy that governs pursuits. Lexipol is what the company puts out as a standard, uniform draft to all departments that they work with. And, I noted when we had our final draft and their final draft aligned and where that language was different, I tried to highlight it in red. And then there's other designations for like which type of draft it's coming from. So somewhere in number 2, for example, you have GOV6, that's the old pursuit policy, Lexipol, CHP, and BPD. They are all aligned with that specific definition of what a pursuit is. And then we have our revision to that on the right column there.
And why is some of the language in the left column red?
It's to signal a difference between the left and right column. So that's, I could have crossed it out, I guess, instead of making it red to make it more clear, or strike through. So that language is deleted from our draft. Same with 3, like 3 on the right, it's added in, on the left, it's taken out or changed. Does that help? We decided not to focus on the definition. It's something that the department has said that they'll look at and get back to us. The things that we're raising today, which are the intervention standard, the threshold standard, which is on page, 3 of 5, which is the current one, is one that we currently have a difference of opinion on. And then we have difference of opinion. So I could explain that really quickly. The difference of opinion is not with the threshold, the substantive threshold. Like we think the threshold is good, but it's with instances where we think that the threshold can be circumvented by sort of loose interpretation. And the way that we see that happening is, for example, in C, if the policy is supposed to only prevent or allow authorized pursuit when there is a violent crime, C sort of allows officers to get around that by whenever there's a reckless driver, it could be said that they present a credible threat of serious bodily injury. And our understanding of the policy, and I think the department's understanding of the policy, is that you can't simply pursue for reckless driving. And some of the reports that we've seen are that the only thing worse than a drunk driver on the streets is a drunk driver being chased by the cops. Like, it's dangerous. And, we want to clarify that language to essentially limit officers' ability to, make that language too flexible, gives too much wiggle room there. That's the first part. Second part, which I think is maybe the most important part for this discussion, is these intervention standards. And I don't think we need to get into like all the intervention standards out there. I think we've settled on especially pit maneuvers in Berkeley. And I'll just say that I spoke to people on the SF Police Commission, the oversight body, and SF has banned completely the use of pit maneuvers in their city. And when I told them that Berkeley allowed pit maneuvers, they were like, what the heck, that's crazy. It is considered to be one of those dangerous intervention tactics that the police can employ in a pursuit. And so my proposal for this body is we actually have officers, trainers from other departments come in and speak to our board to sort of educate us on the use of pit maneuvers and the use of other intervention tactics in cities, so we can get an understanding of how they intersect with neighborhoods that are arranged like Berkeley's, with streets like Berkeley's. They're common, like the PIB maneuver was born in NASCAR, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Cars. Yeah.
Be able to find out exactly what it is.
I think in context of what he was trying to say is the pit maneuver where car will come up from behind another vehicle and like tap it and force it to spin. Is that what you're referring to?
Sure, tap is one verb we could use.
Tap or hit or collide or push.
Ram.
Yeah, and that is something that we do not do. We're not trained in that. We have never implemented that. Maybe some departments have down south. That's not something we do. Our intervention techniques most commonly have to do with the spike strips to try and have them run over and pop the tires. That would be the limit of that.
I would love if that was what was written into the policy, but it's not. So, I mean, they don't do it, but it's written in the policy that they can. So it makes it even easier in my mind, that if they don't do it, you know, we can write it down and say they shouldn't be allowed here.
Excuse me, can I just interject one other thing, just process wise? So what we're doing tonight is just kind of giving you a highlight about some of the issues. And I like Board Member Cayetano's suggestion about having somebody come speak to us. Because what we're going to be doing ultimately, the subcommittee will make our recommendations to the board, right? We will come back to you all and we'll say, we decided, for example, if we decide there should be an absolute prohibition on pit maneuvers. I'm not sure that's what we decide, if we do decide that. And then we'll ask you all for a vote on it, because it isn't up to us, obviously, it's up to the full board. And then if this board decides, yes, we feel strongly that pit maneuvers should be banned, and the department is saying, no, we feel strongly that we need to retain that ability, it's only under extraordinary circumstances, but we don't want to say it's prohibited, then we'll be at a standstill. And now I'm forgetting if it then goes to the city manager. Should have had him stay. Go to the city manager and then to the city council. Again, I'm forgetting what the charter. Well, it used to, but I think.
Not anymore. It goes to city manager unless the city council intervenes. So they have to make an affirmative act to intervene. We have to ask them to intervene in the city managers. That's what's written in the charter now.
So we can ask city council.
Yes.
Which we would do.
Yes.
Which
But I think the reason I'm asking is because I think we need some education before we make a vote on it. I mean, I think it's an important issue. So it's a pretty simple ask, and at this current stage.
And I would just say that in general, we've had really productive discussions with the department. And even though maybe we would think our language is better, you know, we're willing to concede when it's things that aren't super important, just in the spirit of cooperation and to get things done, because this is taking forever. But we need to figure out what we're going to, you know, really stick to our guns on. And I don't think there will be many issues, but this is certainly one of them.
So are we comfortable?
I just have one quick question. You started off your presentation by saying that the department came to realize that they had to modify their vehicle pursuit policy in light of ALPRs, and I don't understand that.
I think the idea, and I know this is what I heard at the meeting, last meeting, is that ALPRs, the fact of them leads to more police investigations, which could lead to more pursuits, which opens them up to liability if they do not have an updated pursuit policy.
There is a, I guess a slang or a jargon with ALPRs called phishing, where, I'm not saying Berkeley officers do this, but with these cameras, officers wait until they get pings and then they go pursue. So it's a way of cutting out the middle investigation.
And I had asked if we have an ALPR policy and was told, well, we do, but it just deals with technology. It doesn't, so there's nothing specific.
Right.
Dealing with, okay, so you get a hit on ALPRs for a stolen vehicle, then what?
Not when.
And so.
I mean, I can understand that, yes, we would have more, hits or more, findings of stolen vehicles, but I don't understand why that would change our policy.
Well, they want protection for, and an understanding for this ALPRs in the future. There's a lot of liability issues. And I think the department is making sure that they, cross their Ts and dot their Is in a way that says they have procedures and protocols behind, the ALPR system. And that's why they wanted us to be able to come together and get this done all at once. So they're looking at the ALPR program and our vehicle pursuit policy in tandem, and we should too. But before we get started, I wanted to see if Kit wanted to say something. I'm waiting, Brad, if you'd like to share, I'd like to hear.
Thank you. I do have a few comments I'd like to make. And one of the things that occurred to me with the ALPRs is the ALPRs item about vehicles that are moving, right? So they know this vehicle is on the road, moving now. If we want to find this vehicle, we will find it in motion. And I think that may be one of the things that would tend to increase the likelihood of it being a pursuit. The two comments I wanted to make is, one of the things that I think is pretty important, where the department and the subcommittee are not together yet, is in section number, it would be section number 8.2, about the use of, no, it's not 8.2, I'm sorry. Yes, it is 8.2. No, it's not. 8.1 about the use of firearms. And I will remember, and I know that board member Calavita and Leftwich and maybe some others recall the when the council worked on the use of force policy. And I do think it'd be very important that there not be a separate section on the use of firearms in vehicle pursuits, but that the vehicle pursuit refer to the use of force policy. And there may be, I understand there may be changes coming to the use of force policy, but that was the current use of force policy was one that city council did look at in detail and voted on. And so, and in any case, I think it's best for it to refer to the use of force policy there.
You can see that on number 4 of the appendix. The language that the department and lexical is on the left, and the language of V6, the whole policy, and our draft is on the right.
It's near the bottom of the 10th page of the appendix. And then one other item that I wanted to comment on. I actually had an in-depth conversation with a member of the public. I consider it my job to, try to represent public opinion and not just my own opinion. And I talked to somebody who has very strong feelings about wanting more police intervention generally, and more pursuit of not just crimes against violent crimes, but property crimes. She's somebody whose car was badly damaged by an attempt to steal the catalytic converter. And she has very strong opinions. So I thought, good, I'll find out what her opinions are. And when I talked to her, two things I was struck by that I specifically wanted to know is, does she feel that property crime warrants high-speed chases? And her answer to that was no. And I also was concerned about this issue of it. It seems so often that the chase of a stolen vehicle results in the stolen vehicle crashing and being wrecked. And I wanted to know, is her very active desire for the miscreants to be caught and punished extend to feeling like, well, it was worth it if the vehicle gets wrecked? And she's like, well, no, if it was my car that was stolen, I don't want them to chase it and the vehicle to end up wrecked. And I just think that that's a sort of public sentiments that are helpful to sort of keep in mind in terms of the desired outcomes for the policies that you are going to be working on. Thank you.
Can I say one last thing before everyone should weigh in, but I just want to say, we also made a public records request for the 187A forms, which are pursuit forms. We only got back 3 years of data from Berkeley Police Department, and we didn't get it from Berkeley Police Department. We got it from the California Highway Patrol. We requested 2013 to 2023. We got back 2021 to 2023. It's very difficult for our subcommittee to make empirically, statistically informed, policy recommendations without that data. And so another thing that I want to ask this board to do is I don't want to use the word subpoena. I want to be the word kindly and forcefully ask the department to give us those 187A forms from 2013 to 2020 that we were not able to get from the California Highway Patrol. For the life of me, I cannot understand why we had to go to California Highway Patrol to get forms that Berkeley Police Department produces for them by state law. And I asked again and again, the department, why can't you give this to us? They didn't have an answer. They just said, you have to go to California Highway Patrol. It didn't make any sense to me. And so we got 3 years worth of data, and the data is not enough to draw inferences. I mean, I can tell you that we had 17 pursuits in 3 years, and of those 17 pursuits, there was only 4 apprehensions, which is 5-ish%, which is very low. But is that enough of a sample size to make a statistical inference? No, we had 17 pursuits. Like, it's not enough. So we need that entire subset of data.
I'm not mistaken. In Rio, you work in the record department. Do you have a response to that, and why it's so difficult to see the records out there?
I think one of the considerations they were going through was whether or not it was our record to release. So that's a state form. So the CHP has a lot of state forms that other departments use throughout the state. I do believe this is being currently reviewed by our department. Should have an answer soon on that.
Yeah, we have 60 days to review this policy, so we need to make the decision soon. So we'd appreciate a response relatively quickly. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to go back to that broader point that you made about the balance that the vehicle pursuit policy has to have with public safety and with the desire to capture or prevent crime. And I think that it's interesting that the ALPR is mentioned in here, because I do think that's, in my mind, the big trade-off that we as a community have to choose to make. If the value that we have is in public safety, and we agree that vehicle pursuits are a danger to public safety, the alternative is surveillance, right? Is what I have heard as the Trader Joe's incident is sort of the ideal version of that vehicle pursuit. And again, with my ride along, that was the story that was shared of, a vehicle is identified from a crime, and surveillance was able to see that vehicle after the crime was committed in a different location, and then be able to effectively block that vehicle from leaving the location, right? So the Trader Joe's parking lot is sort of the ideal, it's not like it didn't work, but the ideal scenario is to prevent the pursuit, right? To say, there's the vehicle, the people in the vehicle, we're gonna stop the vehicle moving, right? So, I think my anticipation is the ALPR will increase the number of instances where, a vehicle that was identified in a crime is in a known location and can allow officers to go to that location without chasing the vehicle from a crime. But I just want us to sort of be cognizant as a body of that sort of broader relationship, it seems to me, between saying, if we want to increase public safety, and we know that we hear from the public a desire to do something about property crime, for example, and we know that the way that property crime is being perpetrated throughout the Bay Area is from vehicles, with the expectation that once you're in that vehicle, it's base, right? Generally vehicle pursuits aren't happening off of those purposes. That the surveillance is the other direction, right? That the sort of non-pursuit, but not letting somebody just get away is ALPR.
I hear that. I still think they're more connected. There's more interconnectedness, because once they find someone, even if a crime wasn't just committed, they're still going to flee. And that's,
Right, the trick is like, can we, again, the example that I heard in my ride along was, so they sort of identified the vehicle and were able to see the vehicle get to a gas station. And once they got to the gas station, they got out, they were able to block the vehicle, they were able to come in, block the vehicle, and apprehend the suspects.
great.
Before the pursuit occurred, and then, you know, if there's that.
I thought the reason that this policy review was begun was in part because it was assumed that ALPRs would increase the number of pursuits. I thought that that was what you began the discussion talking about.
I'll give you an example of why.
The pact of ALPRs would increase the number of vehicle pursuits. I thought that was their logic behind.
Yes.
I'll give you an example of why. I mean, like you have a variety of reasons for LPR hits. Lieutenant can speak to them. A lot of them are stolen vehicles. Other of them could be wanted for homicide.
1 out of 10 is also a bad cult.
There's a lot of reasons, and some of those reasons would justify a pursuit being initiated. Some of them for crimes committed like 5 years ago. You know, you just don't know. So there's a lot of reasons why LPRN's pursuit policy intercepted.
No, I think that's right. The deputy chief earlier, you know, during her update, mentioned that obviously they're beta testing with kind of a small number of officers and supervisors this process. At what point is it worth it? And presumably part of that's to hammer out the procedure of how it's gonna work. You know, at what point is it worth it for us to sort of ask for kind of a presentation or, you know, whether it's at the committee level or whether it's at the board level? It feels like a lot of this is being hammered out as we're working on the pursuit policy, which makes a lot of sense. You identified that there's an ALPR policy, but it's about technology. It's not about procedures and whatever. It sounds like they're hammering that out. So at what point, what's the right way for us to engage on that? And what's the timing? Because it feels like it's in motion, right? The
I
development
think
of that is in
I think
motion.
that's a great idea, and I would say do it at our next meeting. Because the 60-day clock will start running once they implement the policy, and they said probably the first week of November, fully implemented. They're just doing this beta testing now.
Because I agree, it is related, but it also, it's like, how do you use the like you were saying before, how do you use the camera? How often, you know, whatever. I mean, I'm not familiar with the product, but you know, that's
And
different.
there are a lot of gaps.
Decision of when you initiate a pursuit.
Right.
So what are we gonna ask the department to do for next meeting?
Education, right?
Education on
During this beta period, what is the current draft in terms of their procedure policy around using LPRs and how to trigger subsequent activity? So it's not the pursuit necessarily, but just like what happens when you get a thing on the camera? Who reviews it? Who makes a decision about what to do with it? How does it get farmed out to the officer in the field? You know, just that chain of events, presumably. I think that's again, it feels like there's a lot of unknown there, and they are currently working that through in the beta period. And so it would be nice at some point at the appropriate time to sort of understand what the current proposal is for how they're going to do that.
But is it accurate to say in terms of this memo that you've identified some variances between the department's position and the subcommittee's position? And at this point, you're teeing them up for us because during that 60-day window, we will need to eventually come to a point where we're taking a formal position on the board. Okay, so, and is it accurate that there's 3 main issues or 4 that are out? I'm using this appendix, which I find very helpful.
Yes.
The vehicle pursuit definition, when to initiate a pursuit, this firearms issue, and whether or not we're establishing a new protocol in this policy versus just referring back to the other use of force policy for kids' comments, and then the pit issue.
Yes.
Right, okay. Well, my feedback is, I think that you're on the right track. I appreciate the work. This makes a lot of sense. And I'm open to whatever kind of education you think we need to come up with an educated, position on these issues. Including if you want to assign us something to read, review, or watch. Because I just think it should be a reasonable, a level of effort given all you've done already. willing to defer a lot to what you've done.
Perhaps if
Director, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask, do we have access to any of the post videos yet? I'm sure a lot of these maneuvers and a lot of the discussion would be relayed and trying to get any of this. And that give us,
Not to the internal ones, but I can see if there's anyone that speaks specifically to this, that are public facing.
I appreciate that. That might be, something to take a look at and bring our new education to the next meeting.
And I don't know what we have on our next agenda, but it would be great if we could avoid having a special meeting, just to focus on this. Maybe we will have to do that, but if we could try to, at the next meeting, bring in somebody, to discuss, I know you're talking about outside, somebody from the outside to discuss pit maneuvers, and then someone to, discuss the ALPRs. They don't need to be lengthy presentations. Personally, I think like 10 minutes or something, nothing lengthy. We don't need a lot of slides. And that would help tee things up because we're still in process. And one thing that the department has made clear that they're going to continue talking with us. They just felt this urgency that was, you know, unbeknownst to us. So suddenly it was
No,
very,
it's good. The urgency was well timed.
Yeah.
In fact, we should be on, for the department, for the union, for the city's liability's sake, we need to get on our job.
The only action that we might need to take is about these 2013 and 2020 records.
If you'd like to make a motion on that, I would, be comfortable supporting that. That's just me. Board, how are we thinking? How are we feeling? We were gonna strongly ask, those, for the data without using the S word.
I'll make a motion to strongly ask.
I second that. I'll let you second that. I don't think you had a second.
All in boldface.
Underline.
I don't want to use the S word. I'll use,
Okay, so are we comfortable?
There a point where, would you use the S word?
yeah, next meeting, next meeting, I'm gonna use the S word.
I think
And
that's fair.
next meeting, I'm gonna subpoena them. I'll say that.
and just my recollection, actually, just so we're clear, my recollection of when we asked for this from the department, they said, we can't just call out the CHP
Yeah,
forms.
we
because
asked
they're
6
all-
months ago,
They're all jumbled together with a, I forget it's a,
2800.
failure to yield.
Yeah.
And so, which didn't make a lot of sense, they couldn't segregate them out, but they said, we have them all mixed together.
Or we can ask for both.
Yeah,
They're not segregated out because they have to report them to CHP. So I just don't, I just don't see why.
That's
that's
in disagreeing with you, so.
So, I'm gonna subpoena them next meeting if they don't produce them. By I'm gonna request that the board does that.
So, is everyone comfortable? Because I'm going to go ahead and move us to agenda item number 11, public comment.
Is that a yes? Is it everyone like?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's,
okay.
that's your hearing word.
Thank you, Chair. I'll now proceed with public comment. Again, as a friendly reminder, I'll proceed with those who are physically present first before moving on to our virtual attendees. With that said, would any physically present speaker like to provide public comment? Seeing none, I'll now move on to our virtual attendees. At this time, would anyone attending virtually like to provide public comment? Please use the raise hand icon or press *9 if you're calling in. Chair, at this time, there are no hands raised.
Thank you very much, Jose. That takes us to closed session.
For those attending virtually, you may remain on the webinar. The recording, audio, and video will be paused. And we'll be returning back to announce closed session action.
Sorry, just to clarify, I don't think there is any.
No. We are back in session, and this takes us to agenda item number 12, the findings. There were no findings made, and that will take us now to agenda item number 14. May I ask for adjournment?
So moved.
Second that.
There we go. Thank you all and have a great evening.